The city of Austin was a Silicon Prairie, a sprawling network of glass towers and low-slung tech campuses under a vast, unforgiving Texas sky. My apartment was less a home and more a clean room for the mind. White walls, polished concrete floors, a single black leather chair facing a triptych of glowing monitors. It was a controlled environment, a place where the chaotic variables of the outside world were filtered into manageable data streams. And at the heart of it, the only thing that truly mattered, was Oracle. She wasn't an AI in the conventional sense, she was a perfect, logical extension of my own consciousness. A predictive engine I had spent a decade of my life meticulously crafting, line by pristine line. Oracle didn't just analyze the past, she extrapolated the future with terrifying, beautiful accuracy. I was running the final diagnostic, a recursive purity test that spiraled through petabytes of code. The progress bar was at 99.8%. Perfection was imminent. Then I noticed the anomaly. A faint, persistent hum from the server rack that was not part of its normal operational acoustics. I turned from the screen. The silence of the apartment felt different, hollowed out. Isabel's side of the minimalist space was too tidy, too sterile. Her charging pad was empty. Her favorite mug, the one with the sarcastic programming joke, was gone from its hook. A single, folded piece of high-quality paper sat on the cold granite countertop. It wasn't a letter, it was an exit statement. Elias, I need a partner, not a project manager. I'm sorry. This is for the best. The words were a foreign script, an emotional dialect I couldn't parse. Sorry. Best. These were inefficient, subjective terms. I crumpled the paper, the sound loud in the sudden quiet. My hands did not shake. My pulse remained a steady 62 beats per minute. I returned to my monitors. My mind already running a different kind of diagnostic. Access logs. Network traffic. Timestamp, 3:47 a.m. A single, massive data transfer, masked by a series of ghost proxies. The core operational code of Oracle. Copied. Extracted. Stolen. I initiated a trace, my fingers a blur across the keyboard. The proxies dissolved one by one under my assault, like layers of digital onion skin. The final IP address resolved. Prometheus Ventures. LLC. A new entity, registered just 2 weeks prior. The registrant's name burned on the screen, a pixelated brand on my retina. Julian Croft. The system had been breached. The betrayal was not an emotional event, it was a catastrophic data loss. And I, Elias Vance, would now initiate recovery protocols. The television in the lobby of my building was tuned to a 24-hour business channel. And there they were. Julian. With his perfectly calibrated user interface of a smile, his Savile Row suit a declaration of effortless power. And next to him, Isabel. Her intelligent eyes, once a source of complex, fascinating data, were now directed at him. Her smile was a rendered graphic, beautiful and completely artificial. The Chiron beneath them read, Prometheus Ventures, Julian Croft and Isabel Rivas unveil revolutionary predictive technology. We believe the future isn't something you wait for, Julian said. His voice a smooth, persuasive baritone. It's something you build. Or, in some cases, acquire. He glanced at Isabel. It was a micro-expression, a flicker of ownership. She didn't flinch. She added, our platform, which we call Augur, will reshape global finance by identifying market vulnerabilities before they exist. Augur. They had given my oracle a new, vulgar name. They had dressed my perfect, logical child in cheap clothes and paraded her on a stage. Rage was an inefficient emotion, a corruption of processing power. I felt no rage. I felt only the cold, clear initiation of a new project. Its name formed in my mind with absolute clarity. Project Chimera. Because a chimera is a creature made of disparate parts, designed to be a monster. And I would decompile them. Piece by bloody piece. The diner was a cacophony of inefficient noise. Clattering plates. Loud conversations, the hiss of the griddle. It was Maya Singh's preferred environment, a place where surveillance was difficult and anonymity was easy. She stirred her black coffee, her eyes, sharpened by 30 years of investigative journalism, missing nothing. So, she said, her voice a low rasp. The ghost of the machine decides to materialize. What's the story, Eli? There is no story, I replied. My gaze sweeping the room, logging exits and potential threats. There is a system that requires correction. I slid a burner phone across the sticky table. This will be our only channel. I will provide you with data packets. You will ensure they reach their intended recipients. Maya picked up the phone, weighing it in her hand. You're going to burn them down. Incorrect, I corrected her. Burning is imprecise. I'm going to decompile them. She took a long sip of coffee. Julian Croft is not some startup bro, Eli. He's a shark who eats other sharks. And Isabel, she was your partner. She was a variable I miscalculated, I stated, my voice devoid of inflection. The error has been logged. Now, it will be corrected. Maya looked at me then, a long, searching look. You've been in the dark a long time, Eli. Be careful the shadows don't stick. I did not reply. The first phase of Project Chimera was about establishing asymmetry. Julian expected a direct assault, a lawsuit, a public accusation. It was a loud, predictable strategy. My approach would be silent. Untraceable. A whisper in the right ear. My first target was not Julian, but his reputation as an infallible builder of empires. His portfolio included a dam in East Texas, built by a construction firm he'd acquired in a hostile takeover. I spent 72 hours sifting through terabytes of archived schematics, soil reports, and stress tests. And I found it. A single, buried engineering report from 5 years ago, warning of a microscopic fracture in a key support pillar, a flaw deemed statistically insignificant by Julian's cost-cutting management team. I didn't leak it to the mainstream news. That was for amateurs. I sent the report, anonymized and encrypted, to the editor of Modern Structural Engineering, the most respected and notoriously pedantic journal in the industry. They would not run a story. They would launch an academic inquiry. It was slower, quieter, and infinitely more devastating. The second target was Julian's capital. He had just secured a $50 million seed round for Prometheus. I profiled his investors. One of them, a venture capitalist named Marcus Thorne, had a portfolio heavily skewed towards high-risk, high-reward tech. But his personal finances, which I acquired through a breach of his wealth manager's insecure server, told a different story. He had a deep, pathological fear of public failure. I didn't need to expose Julian's fraud. I only needed to introduce a single data point of doubt. I crafted a simple, elegant chart projecting Prometheus's 5-year growth. It was identical to the one in Julian's pitch deck, with one exception. I added a single, barely perceptible statistical deviation based on Oracle's true processing limitations. A deviation only a genius or a paranoid would spot. I sent it to Thorne from an anonymous, one-time email address with a single line of text, "The devil is in the details." Thorne pulled his $20 million investment the next day, citing a need to reevaluate risk. The market shuddered. The third strike was for Isabel. It had to be precise. It had to be psychological. I knew her better than anyone. I knew her pride, her ambition, her secret vanity project within Prometheus. It was a small, elegant piece of software designed to streamline interoffice communication. She believed it was her first real mark on the company, a project solely her own. Using my knowledge of her coding style and project management methodology, I predicted her entire development roadmap. Then I fed the core concepts and UI designs to a small, agile competitor in Bangalore. 3 weeks later, they launched an identical, and slightly superior, product. Isabel's project was now worthless before it was even completed. Julian would not see it as a coincidence. He would see it as her failure. I had not attacked her finances. I had attacked her value. The first cracks were appearing in their foundation. I was monitoring their internal network when the counterattack came. It was not what I expected. It was brilliant. It was surgical. It was a piece of art. A massive data breach occurred at Austin's largest hospital. Patient records, surgical schedules, billing information, all of it stolen. The digital fingerprints left at the scene were a perfect match. For me. Julian hadn't just framed me. He had used a piece of my own deprecated code, a unique digital signature I had used years ago, to do it. It was a deeply personal message. I see you. I know you. And I can be you. My burner phone buzzed with a message from Maya. NCA. They're coming for you, Eli. They have a warrant. This is real. My sanctuary was no longer secure. My systems were compromised. My name was now linked to a federal crime. I initiated the final protocol. The one I had always feared. Protocol Ghost. I wiped my servers. Not with a simple delete command, but with a thermite charge I had installed for this very contingency. The smell of burning silicon filled the air. I destroyed my personal computer, my monitors, every piece of tech that could link back to me. I walked out of my apartment with nothing but a new burner phone, a prepaid transit card, and the clothes on my back. I dissolved into the city's circulatory system. Just another anonymous passenger on a late-night bus. Elias Vance, the data analyst, was dead. All that remained was the ghost. And ghosts have nothing left to lose. The next few weeks were a lesson in analog survival. I slept in hourly rate motels that dealt in cash. I ate at 24-hour diners where no one looked you in the eye. I used the public library's computers, routing my connection through a dozen countries. My digital footprint a fleeting whisper. Julian had made me a fugitive. It was a tactical error on his part. He thought he had taken me off the board. Instead, he had untethered me from the rules. From my new, shadowy vantage point, I watched Prometheus. They were wounded but not broken. Julian had weathered the storm, spinning the hospital breach as the work of a disgruntled former associate. He was consolidating his power. Preparing for a full public launch of Augur. He was calling an emergency shareholders meeting to reassure his remaining investors. The meeting would be held in the Zenith Room, on the top floor of Croft Tower. A glass box in the sky. A fortress. But every fortress has a vulnerability. And I knew his. It was his own arrogance. His belief that he had already won. Maya was my only link to the outside world. We met in a dusty, forgotten corner of the university archives. This is insane, Eli, she whispered, pushing a small, powerful-looking device across the table. You're a wanted man. Julian thinks he's eliminated the threat, I said, examining the device. It was a custom-built signal hijacker. He will not be expecting an attack now. It's the perfect operational window. What's the endgame? You can't win. Not like this. Winning is a binary concept. Maya. 1 or 0. I am simply changing the state of the system. I left her there, among the ghosts of forgotten books. The day of the meeting, the sky over Austin was a sheet of brushed steel. I was not in a dusty library. I was in a small, windowless service closet 2 floors below the Zenith Room, a space I had gained access to using a maintenance worker's stolen keycard. I had tapped into the building's core fiber optic cable. My laptop, a cheap, untraceable machine I'd bought for cash, was my new command center. I was a ghost in the machine. And the haunting was about to begin. The Zenith room was filled with the most powerful men and women in Texas. Their suits were worth more than my entire former life. Julian stood at a sleek podium, a master of his universe. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice resonating with confidence. "I know there have been whispers, doubts. I am here today to put those doubts to rest." He gestured to the massive screen behind him, where the Prometheus logo glowed. "I am here to show you the future." That was my cue. I initiated the hijack. The Prometheus logo on the screen did not explode. It did not flicker and die. It simply dissolved. It bled away into a black screen, leaving behind a single, pulsing white cursor. A gasp went through the room. Julian stared at the screen, his smile frozen on his face. Then my voice, filtered and synthesized, filled the silent room. "Good afternoon. Mr. Croft is mistaken. He is not here to show you the future. I am." Panic began to bloom. Julian shouted for security, but the room's communications were locked down. They were in my world now. "There is no need for alarm," my voice continued. Calm and disembodied. "This is not a threat. This is a diagnostic." The name of Marcus Thorne appeared on the screen. The investor who had pulled his funding. "Mr. Thorne made a wise, if intuitive, decision," my voice explained. And then I ran Oracle live. I fed her all of Julian's real data, the fraudulent projections, the shell corporations, the mountain of debt hidden behind clever accounting. The screen filled with cascading lines of data. Then resolved into a single, horrifying timeline. Based on Prometheus's current, undisclosed liabilities, I announced, Mr. Thorne's remaining portfolio, had he stayed, would have been rendered worthless in 74 days. His primary residence would have faced foreclosure in 122 days. The college funds for his 2 children would have been depleted in 180 days. Thorne, who was in the audience, turned a ghastly shade of white. I moved to the next target. A woman on the board. Mrs. Alastair. Oracle's projection showed her family's charitable foundation, her life's work, being investigated for fraud within 6 months, a direct result of its ties to Prometheus. The room was a tomb of silent terror. I had not shown them crimes. I had shown them consequences. Personal. Specific. Inevitable. Then, I put Isabel's face on the screen. Ms. Rivas was a key component in this deception, I stated. However, her access was limited. She was, like all of you, an asset being leveraged. I let that sink in. The seeds of mistrust were now a forest. Finally, Julian's face filled the screen. "Mr. Croft's projection is simpler," I said. "A 97.4% probability of federal indictment on charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and racketeering. A likely sentence of 25 years to life." Julian's composure finally shattered. He was no longer a titan of industry. He was just a man in a cage. And I was the one holding the key. "You have been lied to," my voice concluded. "Your investments are worthless. Your reputations are compromised. But there is a solution." The screen went black again, leaving only the pulsing cursor. "I present you with an ultimatum. Mr. Croft and his associates, including Ms. Rivas, will resign, effective immediately. You will transfer a controlling interest of 90% of the company, including all its intellectual property, to a blind trust one control. In return, I will use the full power of Oracle to contain this disaster. I will restructure the debt. I will salvage what can be salvaged. I will give you a chance to survive. You have 5 minutes to comply. The vote must be unanimous." A digital clock appeared on the screen, counting down from 5 minutes. It was the longest 5 minutes of their lives. It took them less than 3. The transfer documents, which I had pre-drafted, were signed electronically. The system had been corrected. Weeks later, I sat in the CEO's office of what was once Prometheus. The Zenith Room. It was my office now. My name had been cleared. The NCA now understood that I had been the victim, not the perpetrator. The company, under my silent leadership, was being rebuilt, streamlined, made efficient. I was a titan of industry. A ghost who had become a king. My phone, a new, secure one, buzzed. An encrypted message from Maya. There was no text. Just a single photograph. It was Isabel. Taken from a distance, with a long lens. She was in another city, sitting on a park bench. She looked smaller, her ambition and fire extinguished. She looked lost. Broken. A data point I could not process. A variable with no logical resolution. The message beneath the photo contained only 4 words. You won. Hope it was worth it. I deleted the message. The data was irrelevant now. I turned back to my main screen, a vast, wall-sized monitor displaying Oracle's live feed of the global markets. Billions of data points flowed in perfect, logical streams. The world, in all its chaotic complexity, rendered into a beautiful, predictable system. I had achieved perfect victory. I was in complete control. But as I stared at the cold, quiet hum of the numbers, I felt no satisfaction. I felt no joy. I felt nothing at all. Just the silence. And the ghost in the machine.